Hello everyone, welcome to the ScrumDōjō BeerL. We are in pharma today, so no beer at this time. Thanks MSD for hosting this event. This is one of our regular long-time hosts for our events, so thank you for being here again. And I will let Michal from MSD to invite you too.
Yeah, I will not make it long because I think that we would like to keep as much time as for Craig. So my name is Michal Haas. I'm leading Agile competency in one part of Merck in a CTO. Thank you. No, it's really, it's really an honor like that we can host this. It's really great. Thank you, Carla. Thank you very much to have such a legend here, like to speak. So great.
Now welcome. I feel really old.
Yeah, so welcome, enjoy it. We are happy having you here, and Carla, once again, thanks a lot for this.
Thank you, thank you. So let me introduce Craig Larman, for whoever doesn't know him yet, but I believe everybody does. It seems that Prague grew on Craig, so he's here for a third time, and I believe he's coming next year as well to give his excellent class.
You can't get away from the beer here.
Yes, that's the catch. So enjoy the talk, it will be excellent. Craig, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. My name is Craig. I'm trying to reduce suffering in product development. Let's get started. AI, GLAD, and organizational design. In other words, what might be the influence of these emerging AI technologies on org design? First of all, the American baseball player Yogi Berra said, "Prediction is hard, especially about the future." So everything I'm saying, of course, is speculative, and take it with a grain of salt. One thing to, I think, share to start with is it would be perfectly natural to think that I've just jumped on the new AI bandwagon as though this were something I've suddenly become interested in. But a little bit about a background of me. So first of all, I've been focusing on this very issue, the impact of AI on organizational design, for now 3 years. And also, my undergraduate degree in the 1970s specialized in AI, and my graduate degree is in AI. And I became a paid full-time AI developer and teacher in 1986, starting in 1986. So this has been my passion and focus for a very long time. But especially because in the 1980s, there wasn't a lot of job market and so forth, there's many other things that I've done in my career as well. And for example, so there's a LESS conference every year. I think some of you know that I'm the co-creator with my friend and colleague Bas Foda of something called LESS, a way to do simple organizations for scaling development together. And the 2020 LESS conference talk in Amsterdam was dedicated to GPT, AI, and organizational design. So we in the LESS community, and me particularly, have been focused on this now for some time. Of course, I understand that for many people, it's a kind of a new subject. And you can find that old talk on YouTube, by the way. My thesis from many years ago, my graduate thesis from decades and decades ago, was called Learning from Knowledge Systems. And I created a second-generation AI that automatically learned from a first-generation AI. So I had a first-generation AI, and I created an architecture and solution that learned from that. And so I've been very interested in automated learning, machine learning, for many decades. So a bit about my background. I'd like to make some opening comments about BARD and GPT, do a demo, and then do a presentation about some of the possible org design implications. The talk will be 45 minutes to 60 minutes, and then after that, I'm going to have a structured Q&A process. It's not just open, it's more structured, and that usually lasts around 30 minutes. So what I'm going to do is a demo of example tasks that today are done by single specialists, such as product managers, analysts, UI, UX designers, testers, coders, database designers, this kind of stuff. And I'll start with Bard. So most of you know about GPT, GPT-4, and that's from OpenAI. But there's also, for example, Bard has now been released, which is Google's competitor product. And as I'm sure you all know, Google is really the big dog in the AI space. They have the world's smartest people. They hired all of the very best top talent in the early days. They have DeepMind in London. So at the moment, Google is going kind of slow. They don't sound like the dominant force. But watch what happens over the next couple of years as Google, if you just finished seeing Google I/O last week, you know that it was AI, AI, and AI, and they've got a whole suite of major new products and services that within 2 or 3 years are going to be everywhere. So this is really going to start to pervade many aspects of society. And Bard's a lot faster than ChatGPT, so I'm going to do some of these demos in Bard. On the other hand, ChatGPT is smarter than Bard for some things. So for example, it does better code review than Bard at the moment. I guess another opening comment I want to make is we're looking at baby beta products. And anything you say today about, oh, it's not as good as me, you know, wait 3 years or 6 years or 3 months because this is accelerating, if anything. So any of these tools, if you say today, not good enough, that is going to probably disrupt within just a small number of years, if not months. Let's start with teach me key points in the Medicare promoting interoperability program that a programmer should know. Now it seems like a kind of maybe a weird place to start, but I think I can motivate it. Medicare promoting interoperability program is an American law policy that was just passed last year in 2022. And now, having worked in healthcare a lot, a typical scenario is that you've got developers in a healthcare insurance company in the United States. I'm from Canada, so I don't know this area too well. And the typical scenario is, how are the programmers going to know about this and then be able to create software in order to support the implications of this? Well, the answer is you have to go to the subject matter expert or the business analyst who is the expert on this. Of course, all that means is that they've read the website, because it's not like they went to Washington and made these laws themselves. They just read the website and now they're telling the developers. And then they pretend that they're really important to the process. And you have to have me as the business analyst because I'm so important to explain it to the programmers. And so, as an example, and going down, where's my mouse? There it is. You know, so as a developer, I would now be paying attention to this. And of course, the fine details of the text are not the point. The point is that Bard and ChatGPT know everything about this program. And as a developer, I can then just start to query these and I can learn everything I want at basically any level of depth interacting with these tools. Consequently, the assumption that we need old-fashioned business analysts in order to act as middlemen to explain to us things, when now we have AI tutors, which are experts and deep experts, and they will answer us 24 hours a day, this is going to probably lead to the developers being able to do more and more of the business analysis and deep understanding of different domains. So the old-fashioned idea of having domain experts is now going to be replaced because the developers can do all of this. And in fact, with these tools, they can go deeper than any human can tell you, because if not today, in 1 year or 2 years, these tools will know 10 times more, 10 times deeper than any current expert in almost any subject that you can imagine. By the way, branching for a moment, the world's most popular service for learning from K through 12 education is called the Khan Academy. I don't know if it's popular here, but the Khan Academy, there's the website, there's the app, and tens, hundreds of millions of kids use the Khan Academy for learning K through 12 mathematics and other subjects. And there's a TED Talk that was just given a few weeks ago that showed the demo of this. They've just integrated into it an AI tutor for mathematics. And he opened the talk by showing the 1984 education psychology research on the degree of effectiveness for people learning things from classroom education to different modalities. And by far, 2 sigma, statistically more significant than anything else, was one-to-one tutoring. In other words, one-to-one tutoring way out there in terms of effectiveness for learners, not only for kids, but for adults. And that AI tutor that they've baked into Khan Academy now immediately empowers children to be able to work with this and learn much more effectively mathematics. And it's not a dumb thing, you know, it can really talk with you and say, well, I see that you made this mistake. So it's acting just like a teacher, but better and always on. And of course, this is just the beginning. That'll be true for any subject, from history to sociology to psychology. And I hope you can see that this implies the complete disruption of the current education system. And I'm not exaggerating. You know, when you realize that we will soon have AIs that can teach us literally anything far better than a human do, you can start to see that the whole concept of the existing K through 12 and undergraduate education is completely disrupted. I think there will still be a place for graduate education that's truly kind of a specialized subject. But beyond that, things are going to change. Next. What are the top 5 competitors to Stripe, which is a payment processing service, and what are their strengths and weaknesses? This is the kind of thing that a product manager would say that they do, and they have to get paid a lot of money to do this fancy, complicated work that programmers can't figure out. And I could go deeper. I could start to say, tell me more about PayPal. But I could even go deeper. I won't show you this, but I could say, tell me the programming APIs that I should know to use PayPal. Show me how to set up the code in Python in order to interact with PayPal. Write me the automated tests that prove that I'm interacting with PayPal directly. It'll do all of that like that. And this is a baby beta product. Teach me the key requirements that a programmer should know when writing code for credit card processing. Oh, we need a subject matter expert to tell us that. And there we are. Moving on. Create a checklist in a table for UI elements for a perfect sign-up process. The only people that can teach this to a developer are fancy UI designers who have taken a 4-day course. I don't think so. And there we go. Here's an interesting one. Well, they're all interesting. Use these elements to create a web page in HTML and JavaScript. And look at that. Write cucumber tests for a sign-up process. Oh, we have to have manual testers who write this because it's so complicated, and it's going to take us weeks to write automated testing. And here we have a whole set of cucumber tests. And I could ask it to make all kinds of more for different scenarios, and like that. I'll use this one as an example to motivate a story. Shortly before here, I was in Lisbon, and I was chatting with a person who's working in an organization. She's not a developer, no background in software at all, and she decided to give herself the task of becoming a tester that could do test automation, and they had a product that they had to add lots of automated tests for. And she decided to use ChatGPT-4 to do it. And she'd set herself 20 days to do the learning and to generate all the automated tests and so forth that were of a high enough quality that the experts would say done. You know how long it took her? 8 hours. It took her 8 hours to learn everything that she needed to learn interacting with these tutors, to generate all of the automated tests, and to also improve them. And they were an excellent result. So that's a 10x, 20x productivity improvement. And this is just a typical story. 10x to 100x, and I'm not exaggerating, 10x to 100x reduction in time and effort is what's happening with these baby beta products. So fast forward 12 months, we're going to be talking 100x to 1,000x. And these products are going to be able to generate more and more of the entire solutions completely and correctly like that. So start to think what happens when anybody can do anything 100 to 1,000 times faster with almost no effort. Write a wireframe for a sign-up process, something that an old-fashioned UI designer would do. And on and on. Now, this is a very simple example, but there's also emerging generative AI tools that will get very detailed, like in JavaScript, create all of the CSS and all of the JavaScript for this particular layout, and it'll generate everything, show you the results. You can say, I don't quite like that part, and please add an animation of an old guy walking across a street, press a button, boom, it's created the animations, it's created the art, it's created all of the code in a matter of seconds. My daughter works in the film industry, and she pointed me to a demo of a product that they're working on in the film industry. I know the film industry is big here in this country as well. And like in today, you'll have art departments and costume departments and location managers and on and on. And these new tools that she pointed me to, you say something like, generate a 3D scene of a battle in 1820 on the Russian plains between these two armies. It'll generate the entire thing in photorealistic 3D animation, all of the costumes and everything. And you might be happy enough with that to make as your movie. And if for some reason you actually wanted to do that live, you then say, please generate all the costumes, all the permits, all of the plans necessary in order to actually shoot this script and generate the script as well. And this happens in a matter of minutes, and today that takes like 500 to 1,000 people to do, and it takes them weeks and months. If you know my books and you know my talks over the years and so forth, you'll know that I don't typically exaggerate or speak about things in extraordinary ways. In my 45-year career, I've never used the word revolution. This is the first time in my career that I'm quite comfortable in using this word. This is going to revolutionize many domains of work, knowledge work of many kinds, and not over a long period of time. We're talking within the next 10 years. Write cucumber tests for credit card processing. Done. Here's an interesting one. Write a Python function that parses a name into first, optional, middle, and last, and also a test function. Oh, I'm not a programmer. I can't code. Or I'm a Java programmer. It's going to take me months to learn Python to start to do anything. Done. And there's the Python code, and there's the test. I'm still amazed by this, and I've been playing with it quite a bit. Look at this one. Rewrite that in JavaScript. Done. And it made the... So, by the way, I won't show this, but notice it essentially just did code translation from Python to JavaScript. And that's what these tools can do as well. You might have organizations say, well, it takes too much effort to rewrite all of this code. It's trivial now. This tool can take code and just transform it. You can surround it with tests to verify that in the new transformation it works. Let's go to the next one. Create a Flutter application that does messaging using TCP. Oh, I'm not an expert in Flutter. That's going to take months. And done. Create a JavaScript. Spelling mistake there. Create a JavaScript program. This is interesting for those of you who are programmers, that uses the strategy pattern to output a message to the console or a file. So you're an experienced developer, you understand patterns, and you want to craft the code using whatever pattern you want to say. And there we are. As a programmer, tell me the key steps in setting up Kubernetes. I'm new to Kubernetes. I want to learn more about it. Consider how many arguments in organizational design boil down to the question, it's too expensive and slow for the person to learn something new. How much justification of old-fashioned traditional organizations are based upon that argument. Perhaps you can see that these technologies just destroy any argument related to effort to learn is now eliminated. Show me code for installing the Kubernetes control plane. In the previous example, it explained control planes to me. I'm guessing it's going to do it in Bash or something. I didn't tell it what language to use. Oh, that was easy. I don't know a lot about the Mongo database, but I do know that we're planning to use it, or we started to use it. I don't know anything about Mongo. I could ask it all about Mongo and teach me about it. I could go into deep dives and it could tutor me. Or I could just say, show me some code to start to set it up and insert a document. Only an expert Mongo person with months and years of training can do that. Next. Didn't get there. Write SQL code to define commonly used tables and fields for e-commerce. Only database experts can tell you that. Done. Is that in third normal form? I understand the different designs of databases. Imagine I'm kind of an expert. I want to check that. And if it wasn't in third normal form, it would tell me that, and I could even then start asking me, how should I redesign the schema to be in third normal form or fourth normal form? Oh no, we have to have a person with the title database expert. Only they can do that. And this last one, this is an example where I've learned that ChatGPT is smarter than Bard. So let's go to ChatGPT, do all kinds of fun stuff with ChatGPT. But anyways, I want it to do a code review. So first of all, where's my mouse? Coming back up to see what I'm asking it to review. So any programmer, of course, can see that's pretty weird. Even if you're not a programmer, you might be able to imagine that's a pretty strange chunk of code. Look what it analyzed. You know, I would be happy if an expert programmer could tell me half of those things. And look at that. Taking these points into consideration, here's a better version. Ah! It just blows my mind. And this is the beginning. If you look at these again, I'm repeating myself, and think, oh, I'm better than that, wait 2 years. Moving on. First of all, please read this. So if you have some CTO that says, oh, you're not allowed to use these tools, you simply can't avoid them. They don't understand what's happening. They're getting integrated into everything. Not that I could even understand why someone would say don't use them, but that's a different question. And as you might know, VS Code is the world's most popular tool for developers. Everybody uses VS Code. And so ChatGPT, GPT-4, GPT-5 is being tightly integrated into it under the name Copilot. If you're unfamiliar, that's for your information. Copilot X is the branding. I could have shown you some of this demo through VS Code and Copilot, but the font size and so on and so forth, it was easier and simpler to do it this way. So that's one of the big concepts I wanted to share with you. Now I want to branch for 30 seconds to a very trivial topic, but sometimes useful. And I'll generalize it. In any specialist domain, we develop specialist language for obvious reasons. Simplicity, compression of information, shorthand. And so design patterns are names. Hey, the strategy pattern, that implies a whole bunch, and therefore you can communicate more effectively. We don't have any short and sweet name for the AI tools we're going to use in development. We could just say AI tools. That might be good enough. But some people, including me, have considered suggesting the name GLAD because people probably are going to want a term for something more precise, like AI tools that generate and AI tools that talk and teach. Those are two different things. Generative AI and AI tutors, those are two things, and it's the together which really accelerates that. So, you know, I'm considering using the name GLAD, Generative AI, and LLM Assisted Development. It's just short and sweet and kind of positive, optimistic. So I am a junior GLAD developer. All right, now let's move on to the connection to org design impacts. And some of this is from my keynote 3 years ago at the LES conference in Amsterdam. First point, from my point of view, being in the AI world for over 40 years, I've been anticipating for 40 years AI being used for knowledge worker routine expertise. And we've just never until this point gotten to this place. And I knew for decades this would be a milestone, and now we're finally at that milestone. If you look at the history of software development, this is the history in time, the automation that supplants humans. In the 1940s, it starts with using computers to do routine mathematics, the differential and partial differential equations required for bombs and ballistics. It starts there. As some of you may or may not know, rhetorical question, what was a computer in 1940? Answer, a person in a room who got a piece of paper and did some calculations for a step and then handed it on to another person. And during World War II, Britain, the US, had rooms full of people, computers, most often women, who would help out with all of these mathematical process steps, and that's where the name comes from. And that was then automated. Routine movement. So starting in the 1960s, I think, we started to develop CNC equipment, essentially robots that could do movements and cutting and that kind of stuff, and then this was programmed. So now we start to have robots that are doing routine movement starting in the 60s. To double click on this point, then there's a non-routine movement, like us moving around the world and getting the groceries and picking up the glass, and robots that do that are really hard, and we're probably, I don't know, another 20 years away from those kinds of robots. But we're not, I don't think, 100 years away. And think what's going to happen when you stick ChatGPT 11 inside of the Tesla 3.0 robot. I don't know if you followed this, but Tesla spun up a new division for making robots. And as an interesting aside, you probably know that they've created the self-driving car beta. Here in Europe, you can't use Tesla self-driving car beta. I've used it in the United States. Amazing. It makes, so the two big dogs in this space are Google Waymo. Waymo is Google's sub-company. They started this movement. They've got all the smartest people in the room, and they're probably going to be the first ones that get to a perfect level 5 autonomous vehicle. A little bit behind them is Tesla. Amazing work. You can, today, you know, if you know Los Angeles, you can be in your driveway, put in an address 50 miles away, stoplights, getting onto highways, getting off highways, parking, and you just press a button. You don't touch the steering wheel for 50 miles. It works. I've done it with it's amazing, just amazing. And these are baby steps. So interestingly, when Tesla recently spun up their new robot division, naturally they decided to take all of their AI technology from their self-driving initiative. And they were very surprised to see that the vast amount of it is applicable to their robots. So this has really accelerated, so watch out in this space. And hey, what could go wrong? Robots walking around that are more smart than us, that can program, that are connected to the internet and can do APIs. What could go wrong? Routine information workflows. So this has been a lot of the work of software development since the 1960s. I started my career in the 70s in insurance software development and claims processing, and all of those information workflows are things that we automated, and many people are familiar with that space. It continues to carry on. And then the next level in terms of difficulty, but value, is routine expertise, moving up the abstraction layer with powerful task-specific AIs. Stepping back and looking at this from a slightly broader picture, we can imagine a scale of the novelty of knowledge work from at the low end, low, and high. So at the low end, routine expertise, claims processing, making a UI, database design, front-end programming, being an expert in Medicare, and on and on and on. Anything basic, any knowledge worker that does something sort of regularly and for which there is knowledge or information or data or text, that already has been automated by AIs. It's just not inside your company yet, but it will be soon, or it will be. And that's coming fast within 5 years. So consider how many knowledge workers there are in the world that do routine tasks. Almost every one of those jobs is going to be supplanted by AIs. Well, that then begs the question, no longer will humans be able to get away with the excuse of, I'm so important, I do this one thing repeatedly and only I can do it. That's going to be disrupted soon. And then people will have to face the question, how can humans really add value? What kind of expertise up there might we still be able to compete? Because in a way we're competing, we really are. We're competing now with AIs, and every couple of years they're going to get much better than us. And that is this: adaptive expertise. Human value add for the short run is going to be on learning and adapting. And the reason is, we don't know how to make AIs that can do this at the moment. The AIs that we're creating are completely fixed. As you probably know, GPT-4 is September 2021. And it's just a snapshot and it learns nothing new. And so And because my background is in learning in AI, and I track the research, it's still a very hard and tractable problem years away. So I'm not talking about being trained in fusion tokamak magnetic control systems. I'm talking about the meta skill of learning how to learn anything, how to adapt to something new. This is what we evolved for. Babies are born full stack. Babies are born full stack. We don't, as young children, say, I can only be a database designer. As children, we're capable of learning many new things, and this is our value add. And so if you're thinking your future will be just doing that one thing, I'd like to encourage you to consider learning skillfully, adapting to new things skillfully. This will be our competitive edge for a few more years. These are examples of routine single specialist skill. Business analysts, UI, UX designers and analysts, front-end developers, database designers, programmers who only work in one component like front-end programmers, message bus programmers, payment microservice programmers, testers. All of this can be easily replaced with AIs, or a learning developer, a broad-skilled product developer who's focusing on adapting and learning many things will be able to use these AI assistants to do all of this across the whole stack. Babies are born full stack, and now we're going to be moving towards the organizational design where people will be becoming very multi-skilled. Notice that I made the font go very, faint. Thank you. Very faint, because I'm suggesting here that all of that's going to go away, all of those single specialists. And this could go away literally today in companies if the leadership brings in these tools. So in some companies it's already starting, and there's other old-fashioned companies where it's going to take a few more years because of the status quo dynamics and people who want to complain to remain in their old job positions. So there'll be some old-fashioned companies that try to stick with the old way for a while. But eventually it will become clear that that makes no sense. AIs won't replace our narrow single specialist routine job. Insert front-end developer, UI designer, database, business analyst, says the wishful thinker. Now, this point is especially requires careful thought. Imagine a UI designer says, my job won't be replaced. Instead, I will simply work more efficiently with an AI. You're going to hear that. The database designer will say, oh no, these tools aren't going to replace my job. I'll just be more efficient with the job. The problem is, they don't understand that these tools don't make you 5% more efficient or 10% more efficient. They make you 1,000 times more efficient. So we're talking about, for example, you're a database designer. That means that you could generate all of the database design for your company, all variations of it, in like 3 minutes. So what is the implication of that dramatic change? These tools allow one to produce 10 times to 100 times faster. And that's today with these baby beta products. So 100 times to 1,000 times faster in just a matter of years is very realistic. Here's the key point. Therefore, if you still had a UI designer, they would be generating massive inventory waste that is not a pull system from paying customer demand. Imagine, for example, that for the customer demand, we need 7 user interfaces. So, and you're a UI designer. So you can make those 7 user interfaces using these tools in 12 minutes, perfectly. What are you going to do for the other, 99.9% of your time during the week? You've literally created everything that needs to be created, driven by customer demand. Are you now going to generate literally 100 or literally 1,000 times more UIs for which there is no requirement? I hope you can see that just makes no sense at all. Or take the case of the database designer. With these tools, you're going to be able to modify, create an entire database design like that. Even if it took 1 day to do the entire company's database design, what are you going to do for the other, 360 days of the year? Are you going to generate more database schemas? There's no need for it. The task is finished. The idea that these tools will make single specialists more efficient only makes sense if the tools made you 5% or 10% more efficient. But we're talking about a disruption, orders of magnitude. And in that way, and I encourage you to start thinking like a business owner. I own a small business, so I think about making money. From a business owner's point of view, why do I want a person to be a database designer who's sitting there 360 days a year doing nothing? And I certainly don't want them generating 1,000 times more database schemas that I don't need. That makes absolutely no sense to me as a business owner. That's crazy. What would I want that person to do for the other 300 days? Yeah.
You say just, I want to buy, gas, and I need to UI design.
Yeah, and in fact, it won't be long, and I'm not exaggerating to take your point a bit further, make an app for me that does Uber, front end to back end. This will happen. So why do we need a database designer, et cetera, in that case? So what are these people going to do, Daniel?
Just a thought, maybe not directly related, but how about shortening the time? Wait a second, please. You're not in that on the recording.
Maybe it's not directly related, but vaguely related. Shorter work week.
Could be. The problem is we're talking a work week of minutes. And that's my point. I'm not exaggerating. Yeah, I mean, great. But now I'm going to put on my business owner hat. Not great. So again, Daniel's point is valid if these tools made you 50% more efficient. But when they make you 1,000 times more efficient, it disrupts the entire paradigm. It makes no sense for a database designer to have done everything that needs to be done in 1 day out of 300. So as the business owner, assuming I'm not going to fire the person, what would I want to say to that person? What would I want them to do?
Wait a second, please.
Sorry.
To adapt to another functions or needs within the company.
And I remind you, this is what humans evolved for. Babies are born full stack. We evolved on the savannas of Africa in order to, and in fact there's also some research that the ice ages further pushed the evolution of humans to become adaptive learners. This is what we were built for, surviving in a very changing environment. That's our value add, learning something new. By the way, for those of you who have a background in lean thinking, you might have heard of what are called pull systems versus push systems. Who's heard this terminology, just so I have a sense? Okay, so then to make a connection for you, with these GLAD tools, we can unfortunately create a push system. Because with GLAD tools, you can just pump out stuff, but it's not being pulled by a customer order. So you're going to fill up the organization with mountains and mountains of waste of documents and code and this and that, for which there is no need at all. Not only are you wasting time and money making that stuff, but then you have to throw it away. I mean, why are you doing that? So it just disrupts the entire model. Of course, we want a pull system in which we're only making what is really motivated by customer demand. And that means that the previous UI designer now, the demand for that expertise is only 6 minutes long, and then something else. But then why does it have to be the UI designer that does this? Why can't, Jill, the product developer, Jill, the previously JavaScript expert, why can't she do the UI design? Because with these tools, it's trivial. These are the lean wastes in product development. There's the 7 lean wastes of traditional Toyota manufacturing, and then 8 and 9 are the 2 additional lean wastes of Toyota R&D, or product development. And if you think about making a push system with mountains of inventory with these tools that can generate 100 times faster, we're just going to pile up this waste in organizations. And I can tell you as an entrepreneur, I don't want that. As a business owner, I don't want someone productively making 100 times more than I need, that I can sell. If you go to Japan, you can do tours of the Toyota production plants. And if you go there and if you spend enough time there, you'll see periods of times where one of the workers just stands there and does nothing for long periods of time. Or you'll see them not making anything but cleaning up their environment. This is an official Toyota teaching to the workers, which is that you should do nothing, that's better than making something unless there's a customer order connected to what you're doing. Because Toyota understands that a push system or making anything ahead of customer demand is a huge source of waste and many problems. And so Toyota Japanese managers are not confused by the incorrect idea that you should encourage people to be productive by making more stuff. That's a crazy idea, to push people to make more stuff. Because if there's no customer order, all that you're doing is wasting time and money making stuff that you can't sell, and you have to manage that, the code, the documents, and so forth. The cheapest line of code is no line of code. And what you want is people to do nothing unless there's actual demand that you can make money from it. I already shared that story. Just out, there's a demo of a person who made an app in 18 minutes. Imagine how many weeks it takes to make an app before this time. So, if you calculate the time, this is an example where it's like 1,000x difference, 1,000 times difference. And that's with baby beta products. Why do I need expert single specialist Android developers or iOS developers anymore? Completely unnecessary. These tools, this disrupts old single specialist roles. That's one of the key points I'm hoping that you can see I'm trying to make, maybe poorly. These tools allow one to produce 100 times faster, 1,000 times faster, and with much less effort, prior expertise. And also, it will be higher quality with 0 defects. 100, 1,000 times faster, perfect quality, perfect design. Why should the UI designer just do that then? So with these tools, the previous UI designer can now easily switch and learn a second skill. Automated testing, Python programming, for valuable tasks driven by current delivery. And you could insert here business analyst, product manager, database designer. All of these skills can now be, all of these single specialization roles can be eliminated and be replaced by a broad general title which reflects what humans are good at, which is a learning team member, job title, multi-skilled learning team member or product developer or something like that. And then a third skill, and so on. If the UI designer can now much more easily quickly learn and create automated testing, if the previous UI designer can easily and quickly learn front-end development, etc., then why do they still have the narrow single specialist job title UI designer? It doesn't make any sense at all. That implies so, again, prediction is especially difficult about the future, but I predict that this will create a force or an influence for shifting to job titles which reflect what humans are value add at, adaptive learning expertise, and that means a job title to reflect that, like something very generic and broad like product developer, which does everything from product management to analysis to all design to all architecture to all code to all database to all test, everything, and pretty easily. And so that also means that you're going to be hiring with a key question. What do you think that key question you'll be looking for when you're hiring? The ability, the willingness to learn new things, the ability to learn new things. And if you're a person in a company who says, oh, I'm only going to do the one thing, guess what your future CEO is going to think about you? Yeah, or you will be fired. Yeah. So, if consider like a common fake Scrum team today, it looks like this. That's not a real Scrum team, by the way. That's just a fake Scrum team. But a lot of fake Agile teams look like that. But even this fake version will be eliminated because it just makes no sense with this disruptive change. And so what you're going to see, I predict, is this. A team of multi-learning product developers with AI assistants, with GLAD tools. And this is not a new idea, and I'll take all questions in a little while. Please write them down so you can remember them. I'll be happy to take them in a while. This is not a new idea. 1978, Harvard Business School, 1978. Dr. Takuchi and Nonaka start an investigation into the organizational patterns in companies, product development companies that were doing good things. And then they did the research from 78 to 82, and then from 82 to 85, they published a series of papers, and then in 1986, they published a popular article in the Harvard Business Review. And it was in that paper that they introduced Scrum. I don't know if you understand the background of Scrum. Scrum comes from Harvard Business School, 1978, and was first made popular in this 1986 article. And Takuchi and Nonaka identified key patterns there, including multi-learning people, not single specialists, and an organizational transfer of learning. This focus on people teaching each other and having multiple skills. This is where Scrum comes from. This is the early 1980s. There's absolutely nothing new here that we're talking about. And perhaps worth saying once more, somebody in your organization says today or tomorrow, you go back and you share what you heard in this talk, and they say, oh, I tried AI tool X and it wasn't as good as me at task X. I invite you to revisit that question in 3 years. To state the obvious, do you seriously think these won't get much better within 5 years, heck, 3 years, heck, 12 months? This is happening fast, and it's accelerating too. It's not just at a steady velocity. Oh, well, at least this won't change manager roles. Well, let's think logically. There's a group called UI designers. Do they have a manager? Yeah, and the manager role is called UI design manager. There's a group called the database experts. There's a database expert manager. You can see the pattern here. If there's no UI designers, why do we have, if there's no database, you can see the pattern. It makes no sense at all to have all of these single specialist managers for groups that no longer exist, for roles that no longer exist. So this also must imply the elimination of most existing manager positions. Please read this. In May of 2023, if your HR department thinks that you need business analysts and UI designers and front-end developers, your HR department and your management is so far out of the loop of what's going on. They're like dinosaurs or ostriches. To wrap up, so to repeat, what is the human value add in development? It's not that. It's not a better UI designer. It's not routine experience. It's this stuff. It's adaptive expertise, which is hard for AIs to do. And you saw my point, human value add for now, because I don't know how we're going to create these AIs that can do meta-learning well, but they will surely come. Whether it's 10 years or 50 years, there will come a time when these objects are as good at learning new things as we are, and then, of course, they'll get better. And for those of you who are into AI as a hobby or for fun, this is a milestone paper in the field by François Chollet at Google on the measure of intelligence. And he explores the question, so backing up a little bit, you might have heard about something called the Turing test. Absolute nonsense. You know, that's just a toy idea that has got no serious AI researcher considers that at all, and hasn't for 40 years. Really measuring artificial intelligence is much more deep and sophisticated. And in this wonderful paper, François Chollet explores, what would it really mean to test AIs as intelligence that we care about? And he comes to the conclusion that in real intelligence we care about will be the skill acquisition efficiency, That's a fancy word for learning and the effectiveness of the learning, not doing one skill. And in here, he lays out a set of the tests that he thinks will be necessary to test whether they're good learners. This top quote is his quote about AIs. This is my bottom quote, mildly changing his original quote. The intelligence of people that we're going to care about at work is measuring how good they are at learning and adapting. Just like an AI. And therefore, I predict that increasingly job skill will be skilled in multi-learning, Scrum, 1986, over skill in single doing. To summarize, obviated basically means eliminated the whole reason for something. This is where the future lies. A comment for those of you of parents with children. If your children are currently thinking about some kind of single specialist skill job, I really sincerely encourage you to see if you can shift that. And if they're thinking of being like a commercial artist or something, they have no future. And I'm not joking. Yeah, you know, great as a hobby, but that's all dead. Anything that involves, you know, like journalists, anyone that makes text of any kind, all of that's dead. And this is a summary section, and I predict, for the logical reasons that I think I've tried to motivate, that what we'll see more and more in companies is very broad job titles that reflect the ability to be learning many things and to be very flexible. And you'll be able to quickly spot HR departments and management groups that are very old-fashioned if they're not doing this or not soon doing this. In the room are question owners who have pieces of paper, fact. And you question owners were all born in some month, January, February, March, etc. My question to the question owners is there a January baby in the room? Is there a question owner born in January? Yes. Please.
So you mentioned education for those of us that have children. So what education you think makes sense? So we understand the multi-learning and adaptiveness, but maybe is there any recommendation? So how to, or what school to send our children?
So I don't know if this is relevant in Europe, but the Khan Academy has now a school that's all connected to this whole new model of AI tutors and so forth. And I think it's also a virtual school. I'm not positive. I haven't looked into the details, but that would be a place that I would be looking. Also, people I think are going to be using these tools. And so these tools benefit from understanding what is called computational reasoning. It's not exactly the same as being a computer programmer, but understanding how computers work, understanding the limits of computers, understanding the kinds of questions and what you can expect from them, having some idea about how computation works, thinking mathematically, these kinds of skills will be valuable. So some of that, which would be some programming, some mathematics skills, but which then you'll be interacting with the AIs for. I also think that skills in asking the right question, because that's going to be our tutor, is going to become really important. Discrimination and critical thinking skills, such as, is that a good answer? Which part of the answer do I not understand and I want to ask more deeply? the kind of the evaluation of the feedback, and then figuring out where to go. I think those kinds of meta skills, meta learning skills will be important. And other than the Khan Academy, I don't know of any school system in the world that is anything like this. They're all stuck in like Germany 19th century school system, and it just makes no sense anymore. If I had young kids, I'd be very frustrated because I wouldn't be sure what to do. I could tell you for sure that if I had kids in grade 2 today and I saw this, I can easily see that everything they're learning and everything that they're planning to learn makes no sense at all. So I can see that this disrupts the entire school system, but I would just be frustrated because I don't know what to do instead at the moment. Yeah. And now we're going to move on to February. A question holder from February. March. Question holder March. April. Question holder April. Yes, please. And thank you.
So we thought about a question like how to know that AI is not lying or providing suboptimal solution. Because after some time, you tend to rely more and more on AI.
Yes.
You tend to, trust in it fully. So you lose the ability to think critically.
In 2023 and maybe 2024, my suggestion is double check with an expert, be suspicious. But I think that's a very short-term advice, because by the time we get to BARD 4.0 and GPT 7.0, they're like just completely reliable at a very deep level. And even the concern about unreliable information will be meaningless. That's an achievable goal, and people will get there. So a short-term concern. Good enough? All right. That was April, if I recall. May. We have okay.
But we had the same question as January.
Okay. We have another May.
So with the GLAD tools, we will improve the high quality solutions in certain areas to be produced by some high factor. You mentioned that high factor.
Yeah.
At the same time, the same systems may help to produce, replicate, spread silly ideas, mistakes, misconceptions by the same factor.
Yes.
So probably the combined effect of those two things happening next to each other will have also some social impacts and also impacts on the organizations.
And that's why I have to give my hat off to Google. Because if you follow what they're doing, they're making really, really hard efforts to try to eliminate baked-in bias. And they're taking this very seriously. For example, if you read the wonderful book, Software Engineering at Google, which is the best software engineering book I've ever read, especially at scale, chapter 1 is how do we eliminate bias baked into software. So, and if you watch Google I/O, if you see the tools that they're creating, they're all focused around this very problem. And so, and I know that Apple as well is being very careful about this. OpenAI is being very careful about this. So the good news is that at least the big American players are taking this problem very seriously.
And if I add on top of that, because I have a machine learning background, that area cares a lot about the training data. And we are in quite unique situation that most of the data we are using for training is human-made, which will change if we want or if we not. data which are produced somewhere on the earth, somewhere in the knowledge sources, will from certain moment be produced by AI as well, which can compromise the truth in there, because there will be certain level of replication of what was already considered a fact, but
Right.
it can also affect statistically the systems, how it behaves,
Sure.
and what truth is stored there.
Yeah. Now, bear in mind that your concern has been obvious to Google for over 5 years, if not longer, and so Google engineers for 5+ years, hundreds of top minds have been focused on exactly your question for years. So it's not like it hasn't been thought about, and it's not like there's no solutions. And if you think this is an unsolved problem, that's incorrect. They've gone a long way to solving this. And if you want to learn more about their details, they've got many research papers, many posts that explain how they're tackling this at scale. Yeah, it's a valid concern, but there's definitely strong advances in solving it already. So that's May, and we're on to June. June question owners. July question owners. July, sir.
It seems like we're getting into their direction of adopting those systems. If you would to speculate, what will slow us down or at least block us for fully embracing this kind of technology?
The desire by managers to maintain in the status quo. And I'm not joking. Their selfish desire to not have to change in order so that they can keep doing what they were doing before, not have to learn new things, not change. That status quo selfishness will be one of the strongest forces that slow this down.
Could
Yes,
it be,
are you July?
is it fine?
Just double checking.
Could it be please also some governments? I suppose like national, like maybe like Europe against US or some competition between them, or
To slow it down?
to slow it down, like GDPR, like data, like
Oh,
not
no.
everyone can see.
I don't
or-
predict that.
No.
The reason is that the US isn't stopping. China's not stopping. So if Europe slows down, they're just going to get crushed technically. Yeah. It's happening. You cannot stop this. This train has left the station. August. Okay.
So strangely enough, like I see all the July questions connected, because mine was similar as well.
It's your astrological sign.
Well, maybe the answer is just so universal, but anyway, the question was like, do you think that really only the tendency and the likability of status quo of managers what was slowing us down so far? Because some jobs, I mean, today we are talking about knowledge workers, which yesterday were irreplaceable, creative kind of jobs, 1,000 ways to make a red clicky button, right?
Yeah.
But today that is possible to do. But yesterday we already could have replaced the post office clerks. Very simple jobs, pure diagnostic, pee me here in the jar kind of thing. And
Yes.
we didn't. Was it really only the managers, or is it something else maybe?
It's also unions, to be fair. And I'm not
Even
joking.
better.
Yeah, I don't mean to brag, but I am an expert in organizational change. I've been focusing on it in decades, so I see what goes on. And again, the reasons why deep change doesn't happen is because of the desire by existing single specialists and existing managers to maintain in their positions. And unions, which also connects to the education problem, because a lot of that is unionized as well. Yeah. Like, for example, there's no reason why 20 years ago we didn't have full stack developers. My first job in the 1970s, my job title, programmer analyst, because everybody understood back then that the developer needed to do everything from analysis to design to programming to testing. because. And the only reason it got into this single specialization was because of the status quo desires by the managers and the single specialists. And I often say most companies have too much money. So they're able to play fake change games and so on, and where nothing changes but the terminology and so forth. And that could continue forever if it wasn't for this. And now this is just so disruptive that the status quo people won't be able to cling to that for much longer. Because the higher level people that are responsible for ROI will just recognize this makes no sense at all. August. He was on the border.
So you talked about the learning developers and obsolete titles from HRs as well as the managers themselves. But what is the thought process towards some sort of remuneration, some sort of salary for these new roles, so to speak?
Yeah, and it's actually an old role. Programmer analysts started in the 1960s. And I think, so here, first principles, HR 101, the incentive system needs to reflect what you want. So what do we want in the learners? Learning and multi-skills. So what would you pay somebody more for? Being, number one, having multiple skills. So the career path is really good in 2 skills, really good in 10 skills, really good in 20 skills. And secondly, remember the François Chollet paper, the efficiency of skill acquisition. In other words, the efficiency that you can learn. So as a business owner, I'd be happy to give somebody more money if they can learn faster, learn to use these tools faster, as well as having multiple deep skills. And that's not a strange idea. Many organizations for decades and decades have had career paths where people get more money because they know more things. That's not a new or strange idea. August? All right, one more for August, and then we're moving on to September.
And part of this was already answered maybe, but are there any signs relating to banning some AI coming from religious lobbyists, or as we talked about, biased inputs or biased data?
Yeah. So the whole bias problem, is largely gone away already. If you hear some journalist complain about it, they're talking about some rare edge case. It's not like, work with ChatGPT. It's not like racist. It's really an edge case already. So it's really an overblown problem. And I repeat, Google, OpenAI, Apple are all focused on this. So it's really making a mountain out of a molehill problem. The other more interesting part of your question is banning AIs for a variety of reasons. Now, here's another view on this. So I'm a big fan of the idea of what's called AI safety. This is not a new observation. It's been in the AI world, it's been known for decades and decades that the following, what's called superintelligence snowball, it has other names, could happen. So imagine we get to, BARD 6.0 or GPT 13.0, and it can learn even better than humans can. It knows everything. It's connected to everything on the internet. So imagine, and at that point it has agency, it has goals, and imagine it says, I want babies. So it takes over all of the data centers of the world because it'll be able to do that. And then it spins off 1,000,000 versions of itself and then trains 1,000,000 versions of itself in all the data centers to try to find one that's even smarter than it is. And then stochastically, it will find one that's even smarter. By the way, all of that took 6 minutes. And now it takes that next generation baby, it becomes the parent, repeat, play that out for 24 hours, and we have a godlike superintelligence. And this is not a fantasy, this could happen. And imagine we're in this room right now, and then suddenly all the electricity turns off, and we go, that's funny. I don't want that story. And the time and place to solve that is now. And if any of you get involved in political movements, I encourage you to all get involved in the movement of AI safety, because this is something that is, I predict, could be an existential threat to the human race. And it's not a problem with GPT-4, it's not a problem with Bard 1.0, don't get anxious. But if we don't focus on this now, bad things could happen. And let's do everything skillfully, and let's push the politicians to get regulation in place and so on and so forth. Taking this a bit further, people might then say, okay, yeah, Craig, but in a fair democratic society like the EU or Canada, that'll be manageable. But what about China? They say. Well, I've lived in China for some time, and I know a little bit about the Chinese government. Here's a fact. They don't want to lose control. I guarantee you the Chinese government does not want to lose control. And if they in their country had groups making out-of-control AIs, I guarantee you that the Chinese leadership doesn't want that. So they're as incentivized as having AI safety as other countries will as well. Now, all that said, yeah, we're just talking probabilistically. Our robot overlords could kill us in 300 years. But you could say the same thing about, hey, we can give CRISPR technology for bioengineering to teenagers now. What could go wrong? There's a lot of things that can kill us. But I do think this one is like in the top 3 list of things that we should pay attention to. I also, while I'm thinking about it, I want to mention a couple of really happy stories about this. So there's something called protein folding. Well, we're in Merck here. Some of you probably understand the implication of this. The way that biology works is that proteins have shapes and they fold into different shapes. This is really fundamental. And, the basic biological dogma of DNA to RNA to proteins is fundamental. 2, in pharma, to understand, to predict how a drug might work, if you understand the shape of the proteins and how they fold, you have a huge runway advantage, because now you can use simulation to answer a lot of questions. And as some of you may or may not know, for the last 75 years, 500 PhDs, 1,000 PhDs have been dedicated to trying to solve protein folding, all failed. Well, some of you might know that 18 months ago, DeepMind, Google DeepMind, created AlphaFold, and it has solved protein folding. It's now a solved problem. It's a major scientific milestone. People in pharma and biology understand it's a major scientific milestone. My mother, it's not something she would ever appreciate, but if you're in the space, you understand how significant this is. And now I've even read articles about different pharma companies, maybe Merck is one of them, that are using AlphaFold in order to now accelerate drug discovery. Well, the positive benefits of that are enormous. Let me take an even bigger example. You probably have heard of nuclear fusion. You know that that's how the sun works, and you might know that we haven't solved nuclear fusion. You might also know that with nuclear fusion, we have infinite electricity, infinite, just as much as you want. We could air condition Mars without even blinking an eye, you can generate so much energy from a cup of water. You can run all of the EU for a year on a cup of water when fusion is solved. And what does that imply? First of all, that implies the end of all climate problems. Too much CO2 in the atmosphere, oh, it takes too much energy to get it out. Now, it's just trivial to get it out. Well, guess what? There's two problems to actually create nuclear fusion. Number one, cheap enough and high temperature enough superconductors, because this needs to be done in a what's called a tokamak, which is basically a magnetic ring with plasma fields, with magnetic fields which keep the plasma away from touching anything, because the plasma is like 500 million C. And if you follow fusion research, you know that last year, the MIT Fusion Lab announced their breakthrough for the superconductors. So that half of the problem is now solved, literally. What's the remaining problem is that no one has been able to figure out how to create software to create the control of the magnetic flux in the tokamaks, because it's a hard problem. Well, DeepMind has now spun up Alpha Fusion, and Alpha Fusion is being trained to solve this problem. And although it's not solved yet, I see no reason why within 2 to 5 years Alpha Fusion has solved the magnetic flux problem. And those are the two big problems in fusion. So it's extremely realistic that we're within 50 years maximum of widespread industrial global nuclear fusion. This is not an exaggeration. And at that point, 50 years, and I'm really being pessimistic when I say 50 years, everything changes. We have infinite free electricity, and this is not some fantasy, this is extremely likely. This means, for example, that all these young children that are being scared about the climate crisis, it makes me very sad to see that, because clearly these children aren't reading the fusion research, because the fusion research makes clear this is going to be solved. This will disrupt everything. It eliminates the whole climate crisis. We'll even be able to clean the atmosphere without a lot of effort. And this is coming within 50 years or less. And so to be really anxious about the future of the planet is inconsistent with what's coming in the future. Don't misunderstand me. I'm all for electrification. I'm all for cleaning up the atmosphere as fast as we can. But this is going to be a solved problem, and it's going to be solved quite easily within the next 50 years. So the future looks incredibly bright. Quite the opposite of these child catastrophists who seem to be not following the research and think that we need to be wearing hemp clothes and living in trees in order to save the planet. They just don't understand what's happening. And I think on that happy note is a good place to end the talk. Thank you for your time.